Welcome to G Fun Facts Online. Today, we're not talking about a quirky animal fact or a bizarre natural phenomenon. We're telling a story of absence, of a silence that now stretches across continents. It's the story of a modern tragedy, the tale of the slender-billed curlew. In October of 2025, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, or IUCN, made a somber announcement. The slender-billed curlew, a bird known scientifically as Numenius tenuirostris, was officially declared extinct. This wasn't just another species lost on a remote island. This was the first known global extinction of a widespread migratory bird in mainland Europe, North Africa, and West Asia. A bird that once connected ecosystems from Siberia to the Mediterranean is now gone forever, leaving behind a profound sense of loss and some very hard lessons. Its story is a devastating milestone in our planet's ongoing extinction crisis, a warning that slipped through our fingers despite decades of warning signs. How did this happen? How does a bird that traverses continents simply vanish? To understand the loss, we first have to understand the bird. The slender-billed curlew was an elegant, medium-sized waiter. Imagine a bird more delicate than its common cousin, the Eurasian curlew. It stood about 36 to 41 centimeters tall, with a wingspan stretching nearly 90 centimeters. Its feathers were a masterful camouflage of grayish-brown on top, with a strikingly white lower back and rump that would flash as it flew. Its underside was whitish, but marked with heavy, dark brown streaks and distinctive heart-shaped spots on its flanks. But its most defining feature, the one that gave it its name, was its bill. It was long, exceptionally thin, and curved gracefully downwards, a perfect precision instrument designed for probing soft mud and sand. With this bill, it would hunt for invertebrates, the small crustaceans, insects, and earthworms that made up its diet. This was a creature of two worlds, its entire existence defined by an epic journey. The slender-billed curlew was a long-distance migrant, its life a testament to the incredible interconnectedness of our planet. For a long time, much of its life was a complete mystery to science. But through painstaking research, including isotope analysis of feathers from old museum specimens, we've pieced together its story. We now know its breeding grounds were hidden deep within the vast, boggy steppes of Siberia and Kazakhstan. The only confirmed nesting records we have are from the early 1900s near Omsk, Siberia. A Russian biologist named Valentin Ushakov found a small colony there, and his notes give us a rare glimpse into their private lives. He described shallow nests, little more than hollows scraped onto dry patches within sprawling marshes, each holding a clutch of 4 precious eggs. From these remote and wild breeding grounds, the curlews would begin their arduous migration south. They didn't follow a single narrow path. Instead, they fanned out across a huge non-breeding range. They sought out the shallow freshwater habitats and coastal wetlands around the Mediterranean basin. Italy, Greece, and the nations of North Africa were once key wintering spots. Their range even extended into the Middle East and the Arabian Peninsula. In fact, one of the very last places this bird was known to regularly spend the winter was a wetland in Morocco called Marha Zerga. Outside of the breeding season, these birds were quite sociable, often seen mingling with flocks of other waders, like Eurasian curlews and black-tailed godwits. But this very specific reliance on wetland habitats, both for breeding in the north and for wintering in the south, would ultimately become its fatal weakness. The disappearance of the slender-billed curlew wasn't a sudden cataclysm. It was a slow, creeping decline, a death by 1,000 cuts that played out over more than a century. The first alarms were sounded as early as 1912, when naturalists noted their numbers seemed to be diminishing. By the 1940s, some researchers were already issuing stark warnings that the species might be on the verge of extinction. Yet, the official conservation world was slow to react. It wasn't until 1988 that the IUCN formally listed the slender-billed curlew as a threatened species. Just 6 years later, in 1994, its status was dramatically elevated to critically endangered. By then, the global population was estimated to be fewer than 50 individuals, 50 birds, spread across thousands of kilometers of migratory routes. The odds were already stacked impossibly against them. So what pushed them over the edge? The causes are complex, a web of interconnected problems stretching across its entire range. But the primary driver, the one that did the most damage, was habitat loss and degradation. The wetlands and steppes this bird depended on for its survival were systematically destroyed. In its Central Asian breeding grounds, the rapid agricultural intensification programs of the Soviet Union during the mid-20th century were catastrophic. Vast swaths of natural steppe and marshland were drained and plowed under to create farmland. The very nurseries where the curlews raised their young were vanishing. The same story unfolded in their wintering grounds. Across the Mediterranean and the Middle East, wetlands were seen not as vital ecosystems, but as obstacles to progress. They were drained for agriculture, filled in for urban and industrial development, and polluted by runoff. For a bird evolved to rely on these specific stopover points and winter homes, it was like someone systematically demolishing every hotel and restaurant along a cross-country highway. As if losing its home wasn't enough, the slender-billed curlew was also being hunted relentlessly. Throughout its migratory path, from Eastern Europe to North Africa, it was a target for hunters. It was a common sight to see these birds for sale in markets, especially in countries like Italy. Even as their numbers crashed to near extinction levels, the hunting continued. There are records of curlews being shot in their last Moroccan wintering grounds as late as the 1980s. For a species with a naturally slow reproductive rate, remember, just 4 eggs per nest, this level of pressure was completely unsustainable. The population simply couldn't bounce back from the losses. Every bird shot was a significant blow to the species' survival. And compounding all of these direct threats was a thick veil of mystery. For decades, scientists struggled to pinpoint the curlew's primary breeding grounds. This fundamental lack of knowledge was a massive handicap for conservation. You can't protect a species nursery if you don't know where it is. By the time the full severity of the bird's decline was truly understood by the global community, it was likely already too late. The window for effective targeted conservation measures, like protecting specific breeding sites, had tragically closed. The final chapter of the slender-billed curlew's story is a haunting one, defined by solitude and a desperate, fading hope. The last, universally accepted, fully documented sighting of a slender-billed curlew was of a single, lone bird. It was seen at the Murja Zerga Lagoon in Morocco on February 25, 1995. This final poignant image of a solitary individual perfectly captures the loneliness of a species on the absolute brink of oblivion. Just a year before that, in the winter of 1994, a small flock had been observed at that same location. That observation was immortalized in the only known video footage of the species in existence. A ghostly, flickering glimpse of a bird we will never see again. In the 3 decades that followed that last confirmed sighting, a sliver of hope persisted, fueled by a handful of unconfirmed reports. These were like whispers in the wind. A bird was claimed to have been seen at Druridge Bay in the UK in 1998. This sighting was initially accepted by ornithological bodies, but was later overturned after a rigorous review of the evidence. Other reports trickled in from Greece and Albania, but none came with the conclusive photographic or video evidence needed for official confirmation. These tantalizing but ultimately unverified sightings spurred an incredible, globe-spanning search effort. Ornithologists and conservationists, driven by a desperate need to find the bird before it was too late, mounted massive expeditions. They scoured the species' historical range, from the wetlands of Italy and Greece to the remote and challenging terrain of Siberia and Kazakhstan. In 2009, a huge international effort was launched, with teams of skilled birdwatchers scanning wetlands in over 35 different countries. They used historical records and sophisticated habitat modeling to guide their search for potential breeding grounds. They covered hundreds of thousands of square kilometers. But all these exhaustive searches yielded was a continued heartbreaking silence. The bird was gone. Finally, a 2024 study put the matter to rest. Using a quantitative framework to analyze all the sighting data, or lack thereof, it concluded with 96% certainty that the slender-billed curlew was no more. This study paved the way for the IUCN's formal declaration of extinction in October 2025. It was a declaration of finality, the official end of a long, uncertain chapter. But it was also a stark, global wake-up call. The extinction of a migratory species that connected continents serves as a powerful symbol of our shared responsibility to protect the planet's biodiversity. The tragic story of the slender-billed curlew leaves us with several critical, sobering lessons. The first is about the profound peril of inaction. The bird's decline was noted for decades, almost a century, before any concerted, international conservation action was taken. Its fate is a brutal lesson in the importance of early intervention. For wide-ranging species, with complex life cycles, we can't afford to wait until they are on the brink of collapse. The second lesson highlights the unique fragility of migratory species. These animals face a kind of double jeopardy, with threats in their breeding grounds, their wintering grounds, and all along the thousands of kilometers of migratory routes in between. The loss of the curlew proves that protecting these species requires massive international cooperation. A protected area in one country is meaningless if the bird is hunted or has its habitat destroyed in the next. Conservation has to happen at a flyway level, across political borders. And finally, the slender-billed curlew was a classic canary in the coal mine. It was an indicator of the health of wetland ecosystems. Its extinction is a grim testament to the severe, relentless pressure these vital habitats are under from drainage for agriculture, urban sprawl, pollution, and now, accelerating climate change. The loss of this single bird has left a void in the ecosystems it once called home, with cascading consequences for other species that we may not understand for years to come. Extinction is not some abstract concept from a history book about dinosaurs. It is a contemporary crisis, happening right now, in our lifetime. The disappearance of this elegant, globe-trotting wader is a potent symbol of the escalating rate of biodiversity loss, driven by our own actions. We can no longer bring back the slender-billed curlew. We will never again hear its haunting call echo across a misty wetland. But its story must not be forgotten. It must serve as a catalyst for a greater, more urgent commitment to protecting the world's remaining biodiversity. We must act now, with the decisiveness that was lacking for the curlew, to prevent other species from following the same silent, lonely path into extinction. The echoes of its call may have faded, but the lessons from its loss must resonate loudly in our collective conscience.